Black History Month, everyone. On February 7th, Trump fired the archivist of the United States without telling her or the Congress why. Our first guest, Alexander Howard, is here to talk about the issues and why it's important. Alexander Howard is a longtime technology journalist, open governance advocate, and civic technology expert. Most recently, Howard was the director of Digital Democracy Project at the Demand Progress Educational Fund, the deputy director of the Sunlight Foundation, and the Huffington Post first senior editor for technology and society, and O'Reilly Media's first Washington correspondent from 2022 to 2024. He served on the U.S. Freedom of Information Act Advisory Committee at the National Archives after over a decade of engaging and working with the agency and three different archivists around emerging technology and open government issues. Welcome, Alex. Thank you for coming by today.
Working on open government. And what I learned about that is I was actually working on pro-democracy efforts. Government transparency and accountability are a bulwark against authoritarianism. And our government has known that, and AID and the State Department have invested in that around the world. Unfortunately, we've neglected it at home. And now we're going to see the extent to which the institutions and the people within them are bulwarks against corruption, waste, fraud, and a lot of these really serious issues that you're no doubt hearing about. I'm here in Washington, D.C. I'm probably going to go off camera in a little bit because I have to go pick up my daughter. We have an inbound winter storm here, uncommonly wintry so far. But unfortunately, the way that this went down is not reflective of the good governance we should expect. The Archivist of the United States, like other terms, is supposed to be nonpartisan ministerial role, someone that serves across administrations, someone that is not specifically oriented to one party, that is loyal to the Constitution, never to someone or some political position aside from carrying out the laws of the United States. And the current leadership of the archives is now opaque to the country in the sense that the White House has not affirmed something that's true, which is that under the law, as soon as the Archivist of the United States, Colleen Shogan, was removed, she heard directly from the White House on Friday, there was now a deputy archivist, William Basanko, Jay, who became acting archivist with all of the duties and authorities. And a lot of Americans may not know who the AOTUS is. That's AOTUS, the Archivist of the United States. But they're, for many core constitutional purposes, an important person, right? And we may have heard more about this if you were paying attention at the end of the Biden administration when President Biden affirmed that it was his view that the Equal Rights Amendment had become law when the legislature of Virginia ratified it, bringing in the total number of states that had done so to three-quarters. When the archivist, however, considered that, the opinion that they relied on from the Justice Department and their own counsel was that because Congress had set a deadline for ratification, which had passed, even though it had been extended, that it effectively ran out. And that moment of conflict is when a lot of people became aware that the archivist isn't just in charge of maintaining all of the government records as Congress entrusted that institution to, but actually has other roles as well. And an important one, too, of course, is with respect to the Electoral College. That is something that they have under their purview. They're also in charge within the agency. They're the boss of the people who put out the Federal Register, the nation's gazette, where edicts of government, opportunities to participate in rulemaking, in public comment, in changing different parts of the regulatory state have to be announced. It's part of the core communications infrastructure of government. And any changes to it will have real consequences for both a legal and from a societal perspective if they're able to alter it. There have been no immediate changes that I'm aware of because the archives, as under statute, has continuity of leadership, right? That the deputy archivist for now remains the acting archivist. And under the law, that is the person who's supposed to fulfill that role up and until there's a new archivist that is nominated and then confirmed by the Senate. As you all may be picking up from abroad, which laws get enforced and not, which ones get obeyed and not, is now more in question in Washington than it ever has been in my lifetime. We have a real constitutional crisis happening here. And the question of who's running the archives is going to be a live one. It's very clear that President Trump has animus towards the archives, something that those of us in civil society who've been engaging with him over the past 5 years have tried to tease out and to create institutional resilience against. And the current acting archivist is one of the last remaining officials who was in place when they referred the president for retaining presidential records, including classified records, once leaving office, something that he is now seeking revenge and trying to retaliate against people and, unfortunately, maybe the institution. There's a number of different policies, procedures that the archives owns. They have the Federal Freedom Information Act BUDS office, which Congress created over a decade ago, which is supposed to help with the administration of the FOIA. They have the committee that I served on. They have a very important office that oversees declassification of records, which are increasing at an exponential rate across government. And then, of course, they operate the presidential library system, where the papers, both digital and print, of administrations are maintained. Where they don't exist in an actual location yet, for instance, with both the Trump and the Biden administration, then those records are held by archives in their facilities, and access is mediated, therefore, through NARA, not just through a library director as it is elsewhere. So that's what's happened. We've seen the removal of the official. We have an acting person in place. There are significant concerns about what this will mean in terms of not just the chronic underinvestment in NARA, but potentially how and where it is an institution, both of living, breathing civil servants, and also as a government institution that has some important roles in core democratic infrastructure, will be maintained, will be overseen, and if we'll see an attempt by the administration to change the kind of work it does and for whom. There's no questioning the fact that the president has the authority to remove the archivist. What's missing is a rationale to Congress under the law. They're supposed to communicate a reason. Archivist has affirmed that she did not have a cause or rationale, but as far as I know, is not seeking to file suit because I don't believe there's a lot of traction there. Over the Office of Special Counsel, another independent agency, even more so, that director was removed last Friday as well. But Hampton Dellinger, as the name, he actually successfully went to court and it has now gone back to work because that statute says that there must be a rationale provided. So what I and lots of other people are waiting on is to see whether the members of Congress who represent other places. Unfortunately, as a District of Columbia resident, I have Delegate Norton and no senators. To see if Congress will insist that the administration does, in fact, communicate a reason under law for the positions that that's required for, and if we'll see more of the civil servants who have similar protections or other appointees go to the courts to fight against that. Another one to watch for this one is the chair of the Federal Election Commission, Ellen Weintraub, who the president informed had been removed. That's not how you're supposed to handle the FEC either. So that's basically the quick brief. And if you all have questions or other places you want to take this, let me know.
Yeah, we do have a few questions about the archivist in the Q&A box. Let me just go through and find a couple of good ones. One question, which I think you sort of answered, but maybe you might want to reiterate it, is
Mhm.
what does the archivist do?
Hmm. Okay. So, people, I think, have a pretty good sense that they're in charge of running the National Archives and Records Administration. So they're the head of the sprawling agency, the presidential library system, and the components that exist within the National Archives, which include things like the National Declassification Center, as a for instance. They also have, like I said, a role in certifying the Electoral College votes, have a role in ratifying any constitutional amendments that come before them. They have a role in terms of making policy around records retention, which means scheduling records, defining what a record is, ascertaining if the records have been properly scheduled and archived. Following up any reports of unauthorized disposition. There's a chief records officer of the United States who is supposed to be at the archives. The most recent Crotus retired before, because he was part of the group that noticed that there were records missing from what should have been turned over, and is in charge of effectively maintaining the memory of the executive branch of the United States. The Library of Congress maintains the legislative branch records, and the archives is supposed to be doing all of the other side, including presidential records. But they don't have a statutory authority to prosecute. All they can do is do what they did with Trump, which is to refer anyone for documented criminal activity and then to follow the case. And that's become a real issue, which is something that I and other advocates pointed out to Congress in 2021. If a president decides not to follow the Presidential Records Act, there's no real enforcement mechanism. All you can do is refer them to the DOJ, which, as we all now know, has a policy around prosecuting a sitting president, and inform Congress. And now we're dealing with the trouble of a legislative branch that is captured and therefore not fulfilling its constitutional role to check and balance an executive in which the president is not just refusing to uphold laws, but is actively behaving in blatantly unconstitutional ways, which is not ideal.
Yeah, that's definitely not ideal. Are there any actions being taken to protect the archives or to prevent total deletion of files, or is that just out of the question now?
Um, The archives has a lot of support within Congress. One of the things that was surprising to many people is that Shogun had shown political savvy and was really making the rounds of the Hill. They'd heard last year when President-elect Trump had told Hugh Hewitt that he was going to remove the archivists. So the strategy they took was to cultivate Republican senators and members of the House, and to keep doing the work in a nonpartisan fashion. And he was doing so. The agency is chronically underfunded, which is a long-term issue. But the support for the work of the archives within Congress has continued to be strong. It's certainly something that I think, in theory, there's bipartisan alignment and support. Unfortunately, after Trump was referred to DOJ and the Mar-a-Lago case became a matter of public awareness, Trump's lies about the archives politicized the archives and its leadership. His false claims about them being leftists or Marxists or radicals, the general rhetoric he's used, has led people to believe that leadership was not nonpartisan. Led people to believe that they had animus towards him or bias towards Republicans, something that we've seen in discourse around this removal. And the thing to be done right now, immediately, is to ask members of Congress to insist that the White House do what is in the law, which is communicate to them, both houses of Congress, why she was removed, because she did not hear cause. There's no rationale, and the law says that there needs to be one. He has clear authority to do so. And I signed on to a letter asking him to reinstate her, but there's not much hope of that. The next thing to do is to emphasize the importance of putting someone in who will be widely trusted by Americans, even if we're not aligned with a political party, or independent, Republican, Democrat, Green, you name it, right? The question is, does this important ministerial role get filled with someone who we can all trust, who has a record of being trustworthy with public records and with leading and managing an institution that has that important role for us? And there are lots of candidates like that who exist. That is the thing to be focused on. You do not want a partisan loyalist or bomb thrower or someone who has displayed animus towards either of the political parties. You do not want someone who might be willing to in one of these ministerial roles around the electoral college, around the promulgation of rules or comment for the register, around the scheduling of records, around the operations of presidential libraries, etc., would be willing to abuse that position of authority, etc. That needs to be the focus, and that is not just a Democratic issue or a Republican one. We should all want someone in this position who endures across administrations. Unfortunately, that runs directly into the preferences of this president and his administration, where they're making loyalty to him a litmus test for service, which is not something anyone should be comfortable with.
Yeah, definitely should not be comfortable with that. I have a question that there's actually two questions that are really similar. How might the Electoral College be changed by the archivist? And do you think that this is like a first attempt to change the Electoral College to overturn the election of 2028?
The archivist has no power to change the Electoral College. That would require an act of Congress in amending our Constitution. It is quite challenging to amend our Constitution. Under Biden and other presidents, that's been a real problem. I think under this administration, it might be a feature of our system, right? By creating sufficient friction with the requirement to get three-quarters of the states to ratify anything that Congress passed. So that's not going to happen. The archivist doesn't have the power to do that. What could happen in a very speculative future in 2029 is an archivist choosing not to certify an electoral set of electoral votes for whatever reason, which could then create a constitutional crisis. We saw the strategy of submitting a slate of fake electors seeking to defraud the United States in the 2020 into 2021 election. That was part of that conspiracy to overturn the election. If you had somebody in place who's willing to certify fraudulent electoral votes, that might be a direction towards that. That is more of a 2027 problem than what we immediately face, but
Right.
it's something worth talking about.
One last question. Has any previous president or administration ever tried to meddle with the National Archives or the archivist in the past?
I think it's fair to say that in United States history, before an archives existed, there's a lot of administrations and presidencies who have sought to meddle with records, either to prevent their creation, to prevent there being public access to them, or even to engage in what they call unauthorized disposition, which is these days known as destroying records, which is illegal, right? That there's very clear laws around that. The Presidential Records Act was a direct response to the presidency of Richard Nixon, who quite famously destroyed records, right? And that was then relevant to the investigations of Congress and the movement to impeach him, which would have certainly have happened if he hadn't resigned. That's the most recent consideration there. There certainly are others. The most relevant historical precedent, of course, is Mr. Trump himself, who quite famously during his first term destroyed records. He would rip up letters, he'd rip up correspondence, he would destroy different elements. His administration prevented his social media records from being retained, specifically his direct messages on Twitter, but there are other presidential records and other platforms that were not retained. The cover-up for the auto coup and then conspiracy that he engaged in uh, involved records destruction, Secret Service or DHS texts, etc. Those were all well-known examples where this happened. The Biden administration, by all accounts, righted that ship in many ways, and specifically focused on making sure that anybody who is using messaging systems, like encrypted apps, that they were, anytime they use public business, they're at least expected to memorialize them. It's not at all clear to me what the standards are going to be for this administration. And if the archives doesn't investigate and open up a case and it doesn't refer, then there may not be any accountability for officials who are using shadow or dark IT to move outside of the purview of records keeping, and therefore for the Freedom of Information Act, either for federal records that are accessible through it, or down the road for presidential records in the libraries. So that's the answer. The risk model we just haven't had for a long time, where you had a president who was willing to blatantly break record keeping requirements and retention requirements, and we have that again.
Wow. Wow. Okay. Well, thank you so much, Alex, for coming. This is going to be one hell of a 4 years. That's all I can say. But thank you so much for joining us today. And perhaps maybe in the future, when something else weird happens, you can come back and update us on what's going on.
You bet. Thank you for the invitation and the great questions. Keep raising your voices to your members of Congress and keep asking them to hold the administration to account for its transparency and accountability and ethics obligations. It's critical that Americans keep raising your voices and insisting upon the rule of law, because no one else is coming to help. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Please stay safe in the snowstorm. Thanks. Our next guest is who we've all been waiting for, Malcolm Nance. As you may or may not know, Malcolm Nance has done several webinars with us in the past, and Malcolm Nance is a former naval intelligence, counterterrorism, and intelligence officer specializing in the Middle East. He's a combat veteran, and he is a historian and author. He spent 35 years participating in field and combat intelligence activities in both covert and clandestine, anti and counterterrorism support, and national intelligence agencies. He's a member of the board of advisors at the National Spy Museum in Washington, D.C., and he is honored as one of the noteworthy African Americans in espionage and featured in the Academy Award nominated documentary Dirty Wars. Malcolm is also the author of several books, which actually, if you go on our YouTube channel, you can see the webinars that we did with him. Plot to Hack America, and The Plot to Destroy Democracy, and The Plot to Betray America. And his latest book is They Want to Kill Americans, the Malicious, Terrorist, and Deranged Ideology of the Trump Insurgency. Welcome, Malcolm.
Well, I'm always glad to be present at Democratic Underground, or sorry, Democrats Abroad events. I'm sorry, I read the DU all the time.
Yeah, well, we might be the Democratic Underground in a few weeks.
Well, by
So.
the end of this seminar, I might have recruited all of you. Well, listen, I'm so glad to be here. I'm from up here in chilly upstate New York, where we're having -10 Celsius weather. And I'm very glad to see all of the participants that have come out here. I noted some of the cities. I'll be in Montreal this evening. So I saw someone from Montreal and from Rwanda. I'm sorry, no, Burundi, right?
Yeah,
Bujumbura.
Brenda.
That's always fun. But more importantly, as you know, based on my career with the military, I spent an inordinate amount of time overseas. I was abroad all of the time. And that gives me a perspective that I think most Americans don't have, and all of you do have. So, that being said, when I left military service and I was still doing activities in the US intelligence community, I spent 10 years living in the United Arab Emirates in Abu Dhabi. I worked with the Democrats abroad in the United Arab Emirates. And that's where I really got an appreciation for the size and scope of the number of people who were living abroad, but who could have an impact on what happens in the United States. And I can say with great pleasure, I enjoyed working with you. In fact, the DA sponsored a lecture that I gave at the American Library in Paris. And the next day, I helped them do voter registration out in front of Shakespeare and Co., which was fun because while we were out there waving Americans down and getting them to register, somebody noticed that the actor Ethan Hawke had went by. And they said, hey, he lives in the States. And they were like, just starstruck. And I was like, but is he registered to vote? So we flagged him down. I was like, hey, you Hawk, get back here. And he recognized me from being an analyst on MSNBC, and he had not registered to vote. So we got him all signed up. So it's important to understand that every one of us who are U.S. citizens abroad are a valuable, critical component of defending American democracy, especially now. I've written 10 books. And out of those 10 books, 4 of them were top 10 New York Times bestsellers, and each of them was about Donald Trump and his relationship with foreign powers and how he was pushing America to an autocracy. Well, I am here to announce officially, if you haven't figured it out, we are now in an autocracy. And the only thing that I can say that is positive is that I am glad you are all overseas, because I will say this loud and forthright, it sucks back here. It is not happy. And what we have going on is nothing less than the trashing of American democracy. Now, this is offensive to me. Why is it offensive to you, Malcolm? It's simple. I was born and raised in Philadelphia. I literally grew up on the streets of where this country was founded. One of my places of contemplation and solace is a park behind Independence Mall called Washington Square. And until I was about to go into the American government right now, Tony, it's me, Malcolm Nance. So until I was about to go into the U.S. military, I didn't understand the significance of Washington Square or the statue of Washington that was there. And I learned that it was the site of the first unknown soldier from the American Revolution. And in fact, Washington Square was a combination of mass burial zone and a slave cemetery from the period of the Revolution. But more importantly, there was a giant statue of George Washington there and a large marble column behind him. And that statue says, freedom is a light in which many men have died in darkness. And let me tell you, we are at a point in American history where the original values of the first American Revolution are not being corrupted like in the Civil War. At least the Civil War, the South had some constitutional basis for doing what they did. But we are in a existential war for the values that guide every one of us as we were raised. You may return to the United States and find the country you left or have, gone abroad from and are returning to is not the country that you left when you got to the airport and flew overseas. Whether you're a tourist, whether you're living overseas. The values of the United States as they existed from when I was a child, when I could go to 6th and Chestnut Street and see the very steps of where America's Enlightenment values were developed, are now being corrupted. So we know you're probably hearing it in the news. And in fact, you, as American citizens living overseas, you probably have a greater view of what's going on than the average American. Because, as we all know, our people from our country are pretty lazy when it comes to understanding and consuming information. Long gone are the days where people would sit down, grab a newspaper, read it, consume the information that's in it, and then have time to process that information and cross-reference it against common sense and what they had learned. That's gone. We are now in the world of where information is a weapon, and it is used in such a way that they can easily manipulate populations through short headline-like symbols. We all know this. I wrote a book in 2016 that came out about 6 weeks before the election called The Plot to Hack America. And it's true. It happened. Because what happened was the US election wasn't hacked. It was the mindset of the American public. And even though it was principally started by Russian foreign intelligence, within a year, the Trump campaign and the Trump White House jumped onto these processes and figured out that people are easily manipulable if you actually maintain the processes developed by Joseph Goebbels in Nazi Germany in World War II. Give a lie, make it a fantastical lie, repeat it multiple times. People will believe it and it will become the truth. And as those of us who have been to Germany, or those of you who live in Germany or have been around, you go to places like Dachau, you will find out where those lies will lead you to. The first people who were taken into concentration camps in Nazi Germany were not Jews. They were dissidents to the Nazi regime, starting with priests, political leaders, people who would not comply at all, then the Jews. And they were all considered in one class as undesirables. And then the killings started. Now, Malcolm, that is amazing. But that's Nazi Germany. We're not going to go there, right? No one is going to push the United States there. The American public is too entrenched in the bounds of liberty, right? This is what some of you are thinking. I cannot even believe some of the words that are coming out of my mouth this year, because everything that I was born and raised to believe is being challenged. And it's being challenged in such a way that we may all lose everything. We have not descended into full absolute dictatorship, but it took Adolf Hitler 53 days to bring the Weimar Republic from a republic to full-blown Nazi dictatorship. 53 days. Well, I have some news for you. We have just broken 2 weeks, and the United States is well on its way to destroying the institutions, foundations, and values that created the United States as a republic. And as Benjamin Franklin said, a republic if you can keep it. Well, apparently 31% of the voting population of the United States, 76 million people, decided they would rather destroy America than allow it to become the multinational, multicultural, multilingual, multi-generational, multi-gendered republic that it always was and was progressing into. And now what we see is not about economics. Let's be frank. Anyone here that believes that those people voted for the economy are lying. They are lying. What they voted for was to retain and make America into essentially a white supremacist Christian nationalist nation in which 31% of Americans who voted, not 31% of the country, 31% of the Americans who voted would rule over the 30% that voted for the other side and the 40% that decided not to vote at all. We are in a situation where America is not being governed anymore. In fact, Donald Trump has set Elon Musk to destroy every major institution and its fabric that has been done from the beginning, starting with the Treasury, which Alexander Hamilton himself formed, is now being laid to waste and is under the control of an oligarchical billionaire Nazi. And I don't say that without any hesitation. You know, I spent my entire life analyzing and defending this nation against warlords, dictators, terrorist leaders, and poobahs of every different type. And never did I think until 2016, when I was forced to write Plot to Hack America, that I believed that the United States could be any system other than a slightly flawed, generally progressive republic. The man that is now going through the entirety of the US government with a sledgehammer twice gave the Nazi salute. He comes from a family. His father was forced out of Canada and sent to South Africa. Grandfather was forced out of Canada and sent to South Africa because he was a Nazi. He was raised in apartheidist, segregated South Africa as a child. And right now, one of the first acts he did was got Donald Trump to give white South African farmers, who represent 7% of the population, refugee status. We are moving to a place that none of us ever thought was possible. Now that I've given you a rundown of the disaster, and I thought it was quite fascinating to hear the story about the archivist, because that is about engineering. For Tony Conliffe, this is Malcolm Nance speaking. Somebody wants to know who's speaking right now. Who is engineering the destruction of not just the archives. This is a revenge tour against everyone who stood against Donald Trump. The FBI, they're trying to gut as many as 4,000 employees. That would literally take the FBI apart. The Central Intelligence Agency, the National Security Agency, they put out buyout notices for anyone who wanted to leave and abandon U.S. intelligence. The last shield that we have for our enemies overseas. And then they nominate Tulsi Gabbard. I'm going to describe her in terms that the U.S. intelligence agencies would describe if she was overseas as a foreign nominee to another government. An absolute nut is about to be put in charge of all U.S. intelligence. Robert F. Kennedy Jr., a man who is a heroin addict, who literally had brainworms, who takes dead animals off the road, who doesn't believe in vaccines, is about to be put in charge of U.S. healthcare, and he has a plan to dismantle it. I could go on. And I'm going to cap this by saying one thing. We are all in grave danger. If this was a report that Osama bin Laden and his acolytes were coming to attack the United States, and I had awareness of it, this is the exact same words that I would write. But the danger is internal. The enemies are within. They are dismantling everything you and I believe. And we, all of us here in America and overseas abroad, they believe we are enemies of our own country because we believe in the values that made this nation great, that we believe and support and defend the Constitution of the United States. We are now the enemies. Now, I know what you're thinking, man. Okay, rah, rah. That was terrifying. What can we do about it? Well, first, I want you to understand that every person who is listening here is going to have to make a personal decision about how they are going to stand either up for their country or against the people that are taking the sledgehammer. And in the intelligence community, we call this face of how you're going to do it a resistance posture. Because whether you like it or not, if you disagree with this White House, you are now part of the resistance. And there are two components. There is the opposition, that is the Democratic Party, the House, the Senate, state, local elected officials. They are the opposition. They have to maintain some semblance of decorum. They have to maintain trying to govern the nation. That is not what you are. You are not the opposition. You are the victims of this plane crash that is happening, this ship that is on fire and sinking. And you have to do something about it. You, technically, are the resistance just by the very fact that you oppose what's happening. And that means you need to set your posture of how you face the world, right? Your resistance posture, or as we call it, your RP. Now, you can't be like me, right? On a scale of 1 to 10, I'm a 37, and I am a direct, in-your-face defender of everything we stand for. In fact, I have a sign out in front of my house that reads, "Don't give up the ship." That's changing today to an 8-foot banner that reads, "This combat veteran swore an oath to the Constitution, not a lying dictator." I'm putting that right in the face of everybody who drives to the Walmart, because my house is one of the last places they have to see on their way to the Walmart and Home Depot. That's my resistance posture, is unrelenting, unforgiving. And you have to decide what your resistance posture is. Some of you may not be in a position, maybe you work for the United States government, but some of you need to understand you will not be able to stand there and throw it in the face of the people that you work around, or maybe even within the laws of the countries that you live in, right? I lived in the United Arab Emirates. You are not allowed to protest in that country, right? I remember the only protest that was ever seen in that country, which came after the Arab Spring started, and that was done at the control of the government using military officers dressed as civilians. Some places are just not going to allow that. But your posture needs to be reflected to the people you know, the people that you meet within your country, within those laws, right? Not all of you are going to be able to be as flamethrower fat hot as I am. I just want you to all recognize that. But if you resist even within your heart, if you know within your heart that you are an American citizen, proud of the country and the values that you represent overseas, then you have taken the first step to understanding that you stand against what is happening. This may mean only speaking to your wife and kids, but that is your little resistance circle, right? Your resistance committee. But since you live overseas and you are members of Democrats abroad, you have the ability to communicate with other people. And I recommend that you stop communicating using social media as your primary method in your own country. I recommend you start meeting face to face. I recommend that you start creating groups where you share information locally. And then if you want, you can use your Democrat, DA committees over there, your country committees, and express your opinion through them. Because Democrats abroad has never been shy about expressing their opinion of where things should go and what people should do. So get involved at whatever level you can. I'm going to steal a phrase from President Zelensky of Ukraine. And also, Glenn, I saw you, Glenn from Kyiv. out there, I should send you to go check on some of my gear in the city of Kyiv. As some of you don't know, I was a member of the Ukrainian Army for a year. But as President Zelensky said about Ukraine, do something for America every day, just a little bit. I'm paraphrasing President Zelensky. He said Ukraine. But you should do something to show your resistance every day. Even if it's just speaking to people, even if you are sending out a letter. Someone said they have a newsletter. Share the truth, right? Because as a document that was written down at 5th and Chestnut Street, where I'm from in Philadelphia, 6th and 5th and 6th, we hold these truths to be self-evident. We cannot adopt, believe, and let other people be manipulated by lies. This nation was founded on what they could see. Now, I'm going to answer a question that just popped up. I'm not telling you not to use social media. I'm telling you, if there are people you can meet and talk to face, talk to them, because social media is being weaponized. If you are remote, if you're like some of my, old friends who were Peace Corps volunteers stuck out in the woods, 100 kilometers west of Goroka in Papua New Guinea, then you're going to have to use social media. But whatever you do, organize yourself together as loyal, originalist Americans and true patriots, not this false MAGA stuff. Now, another point that I want to make is that I'm afraid to say, in my analysis of what's going on, the United States very quickly is going to become a global pariah state. I am not saying that rhetorically. I am not saying that just to be hyperbolic. That is an intelligence assessment. If I was sitting down and I had to write a report, this is how I would write it. The craziness coming out of Donald Trump's mouth about annexing Canada, I am here to tell you that is not a joke. No one speaks about a subject so much to distract. It's not a distraction. He is meeting with billionaires and oligarchs who think that they could destabilize Canada through Alberta and their premier, Danielle Smith, to the point where the United States will, at some point, annex it. Same with Greenland. It's madness. It's mind-boggling. I can't believe the words are coming out of my mouth, but I'm only quoting the President of the United States. Same with talk about annexing Ghana. Ghana. Listen to me. I wish it was Ghana. Gaza, right? This is going to get Americans killed. And those of you who are overseas, I want to give you one last act that you can be. You can be the ambassadors for the true America, for the real United States, and explain that this is not America. It's 31% speaking for the other 69%, who, if I'm not mistaken, over time, there will be a defense of the first American Revolution. And it will be a color revolution, like Martin Luther King did, where people's eyes will open and people will understand that as their Social Security checks disappear, America will not stand for this. Don't listen to MAGA. Don't listen to these people who think they have guns. We're not talking violence here. But that doesn't mean that we're not dealing with a tyrant. Let me close with one thing from my favorite document. Even I love it more than the Constitution itself. That's the Declaration of Independence. And this statement was read by National Public Radio on July 4th in 2017, and MAGA thought they were insulting Donald Trump. It's a quote that says, "A prince whose character thus marked by every act which may define a tyrant is unfit to be the ruler of a free people." That was written in the Declaration of Independence. And that's where we are. We have a prince who is unfit to rule a free people because he defines a tyrant. And I don't think we're there. I think you're going to see a lot worse in the next 30 days. And then when he starts defying the courts, you will all know your role as ambassadors. Call it out. Fly American flags upside down, right? Make it clear that you're part of the American resistance. Put it up in your window. Je suis la résistance if you live in France. Just for God's sake, for my sake, my family's sake. By the way, Nance family, 152 years of nonstop military service. And now I got a Secretary of Defense essentially saying he wants to turn the military into a white supremacist organization. It is up to you and me and everyone you know to act like the resistance, to speak like the resistance, and to exercise the First Amendment anywhere and any time, anywhere. And if I'm in your country, I'm going to stop in. We could all go out and have a sad ass drink over this. So now let me take some questions from you because I know a lot, I learned quite a bit when you ask questions, but that's my spiel. So questions. Okay. Oh, wait, before I go, one last thing. Before I go, if any of you have not listened to the music at the very least, or seen the musical Hamilton, here's where we are. There's a scene where George Washington comes out and everyone's praising him. Yay, it's George Washington. And his first words are, "We are outgunned, outmanned, outnumbered, outplanned. We gotta take an all-out stand. Yo, I'm gonna need my right-hand man. You are the right-hand man. You are the people who are going to have to defend Washington's legacy. We are screwed if we don't stand for what we believe." Now I'll take questions.
All right.
Sorry.
That's okay. Let's have some questions, but I just want to let everybody know, just hang in there a little bit. I have compiled a list of actions that people can do that will help everything, and we'll just go through it in a few minutes. So please hang in there. And this is a really good question. The first question is Mr. Trump a domestic enemy of the Constitution? If so, what are our obligations, especially if we've taken an oath to defend the Constitution?
Oh, wow. Outstanding question. As you know, I spent 20 years in the U.S. Armed Forces. I worked as an intelligence contractor for many years after that. I am as true a loyalist and originalist to the Constitution of the United States as you will come. You know, people always say, you see these polls and they're like, who do you love? Who's the best president? Lincoln or Roosevelt? And right, they all stop up there. I have read virtually everything that I could get my hands on about the founding of this nation. And there is no finer person than George Washington. Every value that is being destroyed today, he set, including the peaceful transfer of power. He could have been a dictator. As a matter of fact, I live near Newburgh, New York, where Washington gave a speech where the army wasn't getting paid at the end of the revolution, and they wanted to promote him to dictator. And Washington's speech at his headquarters in Newburgh, until recently, was the finest defense of the Constitution ever written. See you, Stephanie. And but now we even have a new one. There's a speech given just in the last year that is considered quite possibly the finest defense of the Constitution. And that was General Milley's speech to the armed forces, where he said, we don't swear an oath to a king, we don't swear an oath to a queen, we don't swear an oath to a dictator, and we definitely don't swear an oath to a wannabe dictator. If you swore an oath, if you are a protector of this nation, or you are a person who works for this government, and you raised your hand at some point, and you swore an oath to protect and to defend the Constitution in the United States, like me, There is no expiration date on that oath. You have to keep that oath. And I'm sorry, you will choose your level of resistance for that. You will choose your resistance posture. And if you feel like you've got to walk from it, walk. If you feel that you are sullied and that your oath is not being upheld and you can't do it, walk. If you're in the armed forces of the United States or the Foreign Service or the U.S. intelligence community, I'm speaking you three branches in particular, and you are asked to carry out an unlawful war order, you have an obligation to the Constitution of the United States to not carry out those orders. Now, for the rest of you, you go, oh, I don't understand this. This is just utterly amazing. You might want to watch a movie called Captain America, the Winter Soldier. And there's a scene where Captain America cuts in on the microphones at the headquarters of S.H.I.E.L.D., which has been taken over by the Nazis. And Captain America says, S.H.I.E.L.D. is not what it was. It has been infiltrated by Hydra. Some of you are going to have to make a decision. And he says, and if it comes at a high price, so be it. He's willing to pay that price. We are all going to be forced into that decision soon enough. I choose Marvel popular fiction because Captain America's speech in that movie defines the goodness of who we are and the sacrifice we all may have to make. And everyone who's in uniform, everyone who serves, everyone who raised their hand to an oath, whether you're a GSA policeman or the janitor at Defense Intelligence Agency or the cafeteria worker at the CIA, you have an oath that you have to live up to.
Okay. We're just going to switch here for one moment. There are so many questions in the Q&A.
I'm gonna keep my answers shorter.
No, about things that we can do to help to concrete things. So I think I'm just going to take this moment and talk about the things that I've put together, and then we'll come back and do some more questions.
Sure.
1 second, everybody, while I pull up my slides. But I'm also going to put this document in the chat. I will email it out to everyone because it's kind of a complex document, even though it's a one-pager. So hang on here. All right. Let me see if I'm going to get rid of some of these windows and move things around for a second because I actually hadn't thought I would do this right at this time. All right. I have been working on this for quite some time, things that people can actually do. And I had a long conversation with Malcolm today and about these items. So before I go on, I put this in here because this is the oath that everyone that works for the United States government swears, soldiers, civilians, and your congressional representatives, the president, all of these people. I swore this oath and Malcolm swore this oath, and I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that also swore this oath. And so keep this in mind because all of them that do not protect our Constitution and defend us against our enemies, foreign and domestic, they are wrong. They're incredibly wrong. So one more quick thing. This list is just a list of things that the president can do and can't do. And so far, he's been doing a lot of things that he can't do. And avoiding things by not having these people like Musk approved, and interpreting laws in different ways and deciding how money is spent by cutting off everything or trying to make new laws. He is completely wrong. Don't ever believe a word that these people are saying. He's not right. There's nothing that he can do that's correct. So my first thing, which I mean, maybe is a little obvious, but don't obey in advance. Like, don't think that whatever he says is correct. You don't have to do the things that they say. Just take a step, take a deep breath, and then be like, and find out, is this real or is this just some nonsense that he's working on? Let me get rid of this a little bit more too. All right, so this is all in that document. So call your representatives, both Democrat and Republican, and inside the document are two different ways to handle Democrats and to handle Republicans. Republicans don't care about any social issues. They don't care about people starving because of USAID. They don't care about that, but they do care about the economy, and they also care about their power. And so the information about how to talk to Republicans or what to do is in the document with some samples of what you might say, and you just have to adapt it to yourself. There's also information on apps you can use to call, because I know it can be difficult if you're out of the country, but there's still different ways. I use Skype. I have a phone number that I got that's in my mom's area code. And so I have a US number and I don't get charged anything but the fee that I pay per month. And I think it's like $7 or something like that. It's not very expensive, or you can use Google Voice. There's a few other things. There's also different ways to contact, how to find who these people are and how to contact them. It's all there. We have a action list, and it would be great if you would subscribe to it. Then you'll get the information on what the action is for the week or the day or whatever. And the link is there in the document. There's also a link there that if you have any ideas how we can fight against Republicans or encourage or motivate people, and you can just fill out that form with the idea, and it's basically your name, your email address, your phone number, so we can maybe contact you to get more information, and a place for you to put down the ideas. I know that there's people out there with ideas. I know it for sure. The other thing, as Malcolm said, is to get involved with your country committee or your local chapter. Or if you live in a country without a country committee, you can talk to our regional leaders, because most countries have, you're not the only person, the only American in your country, even if you don't have a country committee. One more thing that's really important is that on the 28th, there is an economic boycott, and that's also listed there, what you have to do and when it's going to take place precisely, and take part in that. I know we all live abroad, but I still buy American things or use American services or whatever. You don't have to do this on this day, and we just need to support the people in the United States who are making this done. Well, we'll get back to that in a second. There's a section in here about learning about the people that we're fighting against. It's a number of videos, documentaries, etc. There are people that are driving this, and they have certain philosophies, and learning more about these people and what they're up to, it really helped me a lot to understand what was going on. The next thing is that there are elections this year that will help us narrow the majority in the House. We have two special elections in Florida. I think it's District 1 and District 6. If you can let people that might vote in these areas know that they should vote or help the candidates out. I mean, I know people are always asking for money, but these are direct things to help people. Maybe people in their districts are sick of Republicans by now, and you never know, but we have to try. There's also in Wisconsin on the 1st, a Supreme Court election. It's very important. If you vote in Wisconsin, or you know people that vote in Wisconsin, whether they're abroad or at home, please let them know. The information about the candidate is also there, and there will be perhaps a special election in New York for one of the seats for Elise Stefanik. She went to do, I can't remember what it was. I think it was the UN that she's going to do. But New York is actually, they're trying to hold off on doing this so that they can keep the balance. So if we could get these 2 or 3 more seats and hold on to the Wisconsin Supreme Court, it would make a big difference in our long-term battle, because it's only been 2 weeks and it's already seems like it's been 10 years. The other thing is we have to let people know what's going on. And sharing memes on social media, on the list, there's a directory that's full of memes about the situation that say a variety of things. And you can just go into this directory, you could download them all if you wanted, but you can take them as you will and share them out with a personal message. The other thing, of course, is to become something like a mini influencer. Make a video about your concerns and whatever it is this is going to be maybe a step that people don't normally take, but millions of people make videos every day and they're no better than you. Make a video, put it on your social media platforms. Once you make it one time, you can put it on every social media platform you have, and put a message telling people to take action or to call their congressman, and put the link to the information on how to do that. That's one of the ways how the Trump administration kind of brainwashed everyone is with social media and videos. And we can do the same thing. Make sure that you're just sincere and that you're yourself, whoever that might be, and try to get people to understand the problem. Of course, please message, email, or talk to your friends and family about the situation. I think it's really also important to talk to our children about this situation, just so that they understand what's going on in the world and they understand where you stand in this, because that's also very important. And then last but not least, just take care of yourself and your family, because and all the people that you care about, because this is going to be hard. It's going to be hard for everyone. And especially, I think it might be even harder for us living outside the United States. So that's all I have really quickly. Um, I hope that you find these things helpful. And if you have an idea, please please submit it to that form, and then we will do what's appropriate to take action on it, because the thing is that Americans have never been in this situation. Yes, 5 calls is on there also. We've never been in this situation. So if you're looking for really concrete answers on how do you stop a coup, I have been since the election day or the day after the election, I have been reading books, watching videos, listening to audio to try to figure out, and I have not gotten any clear information. Yeah, I'm going to send the list. I'm going to send the list along with the video, and it's got everything that I talked about plus more. Yeah, so let's answer some more questions.
Yeah.
Let me just go through the questions again. Let's see. Well, there's so many things in here, and some of them we've already gone over. Um, I'm sorry, you guys. It's just so much. Um, there's a question. I don't know. Maybe you can answer it. Maybe you can't. What about the head of the CFPB? That's the Consumer Protection
Finance Protection
Agency
Bureau.
removal. What protections are in place for these roles? Should it be bipartisan that we're trying to take over?
Well, let me answer that real quick. This is the problem. All of these positions, roles, and organizations are in place through act of Congress. And Donald Trump is unilaterally using Elon Musk to decapitate them and then dismantle them through executive orders and this special employee status where he's doing things that are unlawful. That's why lawsuits are being filed every day. We're just at the point where will he obey the laws when courts do injunctions? We already seen that the defunding of Head Start and many programs, which was held up a week and a half ago, they're not funding it. They're just not doing it. So, this is as good as you're going to get. I saw a question I want to answer. I just saw a moment ago. Why isn't the Capitol Police stopping Musk? Elon Musk is working as a direct employee of the President of the United States. All government agencies and personnel within the executive must follow his orders. So imagine Adolf Hitler naming Joseph Goebbels, right, as the vice chancellor to the Nazi party, and you have the position Elon Musk is in. By the way, that all happened. So these people will not resist him. They are there by the president's order. And the only thing that, Musk is also, by the way, bringing in private security contractors to replace the GSA guards at the front desk. We have just not reached the critical mass of resistance where people have decided they're just not going to take this. We aren't hearing loud enough from the Democratic Party. And let's face it, folks. We are not France. We are not South Korea. We don't know how to protest with 1 million people. We're not the Germans. This isn't Berlin where we're going to rack up 200,000 people at night with lighters, all, coming out for a good time of opposition and Glühwein. That's not going to happen here. America is just not built that way. But I do believe, and I'm going to give you some hope. And I'll take a couple of more questions. But there is a national resistance organization forming, and it's going to encompass virtually everybody. But what it has to do is it has to convince not the 31% of people that voted for MAGA and not the 30% of people that voted for Kamala Harris, but the 49% of people who just decided not to vote and who will suddenly lose their Social Security, their Medicare, their Medicaid, and all of the other values that we have, because they don't know it's really going on. They're just hearing that Musk is creating efficiencies in the government and rooting out corruption. Until someone is standing up and shouting like me, in a position where many people can hear, and it's hard because the news media is complying. They are obeying the orders of the Trump administration. Listen, I am a former MSNBC contributor. I was paid for 7 years to speak on television. And I'll tell you right now, the news media is going along with this. And the few people that aren't, the Rachel Maddows, the Joy Reids, the Lawrence O'Donnells, the Stephanie Rules, they are being washed out by the New York Times that is writing headlines that, equivalent, say that, maybe Trump is doing something good. We don't know. Let's find out. They are not stating the facts that the American government is under attack and being dismantled. That may end up being your job.
There's another really good question in here. Okay. I lost it. The question was essentially that, a lot has been discussed about the sort of shock and awe of this whole situation. And that the creation of chaos is Trump's overriding strategy. How do you see this? I mean,
yeah, that's exactly true. And in fact, if you look way back to Karl Rove, when he was advisor to George W. Bush, he made a statement that set the pace for Steve Bannon's philosophy of chaos at muzzle velocity. And Rove said, we're going to do something that is bold and outrageous. And while you're studying it, we're going to move forward and we're going to do something else that's bold and outrageous. And while you're discussing that, we're going to move forward and do something else. Steve Bannon, who, by the way, Steve Bannon is right up there with the most evil people. And at some point, history will judge him as almost the equivalent with the Soviet Politburo and Nazi philosophers. His personal hero is a guy named Alexander Dugin, who is a Russian imperialist. And he believes that Trump should do what he calls shock and awe, which is make a mass of executive orders, each one more egregious than the next, coming out simultaneously at what he calls muzzle velocity. That's the speed of the bullet as it leaves the gun. And it will leave the entire country in chaos. And while you're trying to figure out the chaos, they will do more. This is a deliberate strategy to destroy government. And the guy who came up with the people who are these philosophers who came up with this are Russians and anti-American imperialists. It's mind-boggling. I wrote an entire goddamn book about this in 2017. But you know what? Now we're having it. Now we are feeling the response. So get those American flags out wherever you are, turn it upside down, and I want you to spray paint whatever language you have. I am the resistance on it, because we need to find out, we need to let the world know that we are not along with that. There are 7 billion people whose lives, welfare, operating in political philosophies and cultures are at risk because America is joining an axis of autocrats as a dictatorship.
Okay, one last question, and it's kind of a combination of two, but I think
Sure.
it's very serious. So, the caliber of incoming intel appointees is very concerning. What is the likelihood of another 9/11 sized event happening? And then the other question that I think it goes along with this is, how do you see the overall of the FBI's counterintelligence activities as impacting MSS and GRU operations in the US?
Let me talk about the FBI first. First off, the FBI is resisting this blanket order to identify and fire everyone who took part in the investigation of January 6th. That's over 4,000 agents, administrators, secretaries, motor pool drivers. It's mind-boggling. This is a revenge tour. He wants to destroy the only organization that keeps internal security and who hunts for foreign spies. I'm sorry. I can tell you right now, I wrote this in 3 books. Donald Trump is beholden to a foreign leader, Vladimir Putin. And we don't know why he is in love with this man, but he thinks that this guy is just, I think, what was it? The Prime Minister of Australia said he looks at him like a cheerleader would look at a leading quarterback, with love and admiration in his eyes. This is mind-boggling. On the other hand, you have Ruth Ben-Ghiat, knows why. She's a friend of mine. Great scholar on authoritarianism, Ruth Ben-Ghiat. You should get her on. But
Yeah.
on the other hand, U.S. intelligence, oh yeah, we're going to have a 9/11 size event, because the things that Donald Trump is saying, his rhetoric alone on Gaza this week, I swear to God, believe me, it is not going to be a Palestinian that attacks an American. It's going to be a Turk. It's going to be a converted American Muslim. It's going to be someone else who thinks they are going to be carrying out revenge if this rhetoric does not go away. This use of the armed forces to ethnically cleanse 2.2 million people. I've worked in the Middle East for over 40 years. This is the most insane thing ever said. But you know what? There's plenty of room for more insanity. He may nuke Iran. I don't know. But as an intelligence analyst, as an intelligence professional, let me tell you something. Here's what's happening within the community. They are going to shut up, and they're going to keep their counsel, and they're going to pass up whatever information needs to be passed up. But if it comes down to them choosing between the Constitution or their jobs, they're going to choose the Constitution. And I think they secretly want to do that. I think Tulsi Gabbard is going to gut the 19 intelligence agencies that make up the U.S. intelligence community and is going to attempt to use our own intelligence against its own citizens. And that's when you're going to see the National Security Agency shut down. They're going to go, no, we're not going to do it. Because guess what? Whatever you guys think about what Edward Snowden said, lying treasonous bastard, we do not monitor American citizens. All U.S. intelligence comes down to a human being, not a computer. I don't have time to read your emails. I don't have time, didn't have time to listen to your phone calls. The FBI did that if you were a criminal that we suspected of espionage. But now imagine a Tulsi Gabbard, Donald Trump community turning inward and all those things you were afraid of that never happened, that Edward Snowden and WikiLeaks said happened. Imagine that becoming official U.S. government policy and an arm to arm the Justice Department to come into your home. Just think about that. Oh, and Elon Musk profiting off of it, or Peter Thiel. So
Yeah.
this is the stakes. This is the risk. Remember, we're outgunned, we're outmanned, outnumbered, outplanned. But we have to make an all-out stand. And you, as ambassadors to America overseas, I'm looking forward to seeing your efforts.
Yeah, I am too. And we have to stick together. You have to get involved on the local level. It's one of my biggest fears that somehow we'll be cut off from each other and not be able to gather like this, or it might endanger us. I have just two more things that I want to say. There's somebody asked the question about how can a man with dementia carry on? It was a little bit longer, but
Hmm.
we all know he is not mentally okay, and he hasn't been for at least 10 years, honestly. Um,
It's simple. The overwhelming majority of white men, almost 70% of white men in America, 56% of white women, 42% of Hispanic males voted to allow him, a man with dementia, to do it. He has been empowered because 5 million Democrats did not show up for this election, supposedly because of the price of eggs. Eggs is pushing $10 in some places in the United States, a dozen. Where I'm at, it jumped from $2.50 at Walmart to $4.50. And that's just generalized grade egg, Walmart, cheap ass eggs. People are stealing them. That is a lie. This is white supremacy and misogyny, people. That is what their agenda is. They hate
yeah,
women, and they definitely hate anyone who does not look like them. And it is now the official policy of the United States that diversity, which is multitudes of thought, opinions, behaviors, and ideas, equality, and including people, also known as teamwork, are no longer American values. They were the values of the armed forces. And it
yeah.
was the values that this country had been progressing on 249 years. We may hit year 250 being as divided as we were in 1860. And that didn't turn out well after that, did it?
No, it did not. I just, it's probably slightly inappropriate to say, but we all know what happened to the last president that tried to do something with the intelligence agencies. So you can look
Well,
it up yourselves. Um,
we don't play that game.
well, no, I mean, it probably won't happen, but um,
Hmm.
so I put a couple of additional events in the chat. One of which is an event about how to manage your stress during these times. And the person that's going to be doing this event, I think she's in the audience. Hi, Adrian. Is I've been working with her for 2 weeks, and it has radically changed how I feel. Like, I'm still angry and I'm still motivated, but I'm not totally stressed out the whole time. So,
Hmm.
if you have time, think about coming by. And then we're also having another event on explaining exactly what DEI is, and it's not what these racists think it is. A lot of DEI has to do with a lot of different groups of people, and I think it's just important that we all kind of get our heads on straight about what it is, because yeah, I'm going to send out the video. I'm going to send out the list, the document, and I mean, I guess I could send the presentation, but I don't think you really want that. It's just what was on the paper. I mean, okay, maybe I'll send it just cause. But yeah, everybody stay strong. And thank you so much, Malcolm, for coming by today.
My pleasure.
And we will have more events that try to, yeah, I would like to get Ruth Binyat. I haven't think I have a contact with her, but I'm not
I'll
sure.
hook you up.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. Definitely will definitely probably get some other people in here to talk about things, and because it's very important that we try to educate ourselves, make plans, and as I said, if you have an idea, just use the form that's in that document, and we will see what we can do with it, because we do not know how to handle this, but we can handle it better in a certain way. We can do more as citizens and members of Democrats abroad than what the people in the Congress can do. So thank you all. And everybody have a great rest of your day, wherever that is. And Robert Hubble, yeah, that would be a good person to have too. I agree. I like him. Thank you all for coming. Thank you, Malcolm. I want to thank, of course, Alexander. He was, I mean, he told me more about the archivist than I ever knew. So appreciate you, everybody, and everybody have a great rest of your day. Thanks for coming.